大家好，欢迎来到 Mandarin Q&A 的时间。大家今天过得怎么样呢？ This is a series where we go beyond vocabulary and explore how Mandarin is really spoken by native speakers. Today's question comes from one of you. Could you please explain the pinyin 什么 like the waiter asks at 1 minute and 22 seconds in the first episode of Mandarin Q&A? What's the difference between 要 and 想? Is this a variation of 什么? The Hanzi doesn't seem to match. First of all, thank you for asking this question, and great observation. You were listening very carefully. And this is actually a wonderful question because it made me think more deeply about how spoken language works. Before we start today's topic, I want to clarify something from my previous video. In the video, I wrote 什么, but that was a typo. The standard pronunciation of 什么 is 什么. However, I still wanted to talk about the question because I think it brings up something very interesting. The reason is that when we speak naturally, sometimes what we hear may not sound exactly like the careful pronunciation we learn from textbooks. And that is a very common experience for language learners. As a native Mandarin speaker, I've said 什么 thousands of times, but I have never really stopped to ask myself, why can spoken Mandarin sometimes sound different from the pronunciation we learn? Then something interesting happened. While I was talking to my friend who speaks French, she said, c'est pas, instead of ce n'est pas. And that immediately caught my attention. I thought it was a really interesting coincidence that in these two examples, both seem to make the N sound less noticeable in everyday speech. Now, I'm not saying Mandarin and French are doing exactly the same thing. They are different languages with different pronunciation systems. I just thought it was a fascinating coincidence. Then I came across another interesting example in Japanese. している. This is the standard form. But in everyday conversation, many people simply say してる. The meaning doesn't change. People are simply speaking more naturally. And that's when it really dawned on me. Maybe this isn't just about Mandarin. Maybe this is something humans naturally do when we speak. So let's talk about it. Let's start with the most important point. The standard pronunciation of 什么 is 什么. This is the pronunciation you'll find in dictionaries, textbooks, and pinyin charts. So if you're learning Mandarin, this is absolutely the pronunciation you should learn first. For example, 你在做什么? 你在做什么? What are you doing? This is the standard pronunciation. So why do some learners feel they hear something closer to 什么? The answer is that spoken language is often different from careful textbook pronunciation. When native speakers speak naturally, we don't always pronounce every sound as clearly as we do when speaking slowly. Some sounds become weaker. Some sounds connect together. Because speaking is a physical activity, and our mouth naturally look for easier and more efficient ways to move from one sound to another. Sometimes as native speakers, we simply know how to say something naturally without consciously thinking about why. Exactly how much sounds are reduced can also vary depending on the speaker, the region, the accent, and how quickly someone is speaking. I think this is one reason Mandarin learners sometimes get confused. Language written with alphabets like French and English sometimes show changes in writing. For example, ce n'est pas can become c'est pas. You can actually see the difference. But Mandarin is different. Mandarin is written with characters, not letters. The character 什么 never changes. Even though spoken pronunciation may become more relaxed, the written form stays exactly the same. Pinyin helps us learn the standard pronunciation, but the characters themselves don't show these small changes that happen naturally in conversation. And that's why learners may sometimes wonder, did I hear the wrong pronunciation? And very often, no, you heard natural spoken Mandarin. So should you try to copy these relaxed pronunciations? My advice is no. Start with the standard pronunciation. For 什么, that's 什么. Actually, as a native speaker, I actually think 什么 sounds a little bit more complete and maybe even a little more elegant. Build a strong foundation first, and this is actually one of the reasons why I started the Daily Mandarin channel. I wanted to help learners build that foundation by learning one useful word a day. In each lesson, we break down pronunciation, tones, and practical examples because I believe a strong foundation is the key. Once we become familiar with the foundation, we can naturally grow into more relaxed and natural ways of speaking. You don't need to force yourself to copy every casual pronunciation immediately. Think about English. Most learners first learn, I'm going to do it. But in everyday conversation, native speakers may say, I'm gonna do it. We don't usually teach beginners to start with gonna. We teach the full form first. What I love most about this question is that it made me think more deeply about my own language. Sometimes, as a native speaker, we simply speak naturally without stopping to ask why. This viewer's question reminded me to slow down and look at something I had never really thought about before. And in this process, I noticed similar patterns in other languages, such as French, such as Japanese. Each language does it differently, but they all remind us of the same thing. Language is not only something we read, it is something humans speak. Textbooks teach us the standard form. Real conversations teach us how people naturally communicate. And I think learning to hear that difference is one of the most enjoyable parts of learning a new language. I hope this helped answer your question. And thank you again to the viewer who inspired today's episode. Your question opened the door to a much bigger conversation about how languages work, or at least it made me reflect my own language. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep exploring Mandarin together, one question at a time. 谢谢大家，下次见喽。